This is a story that is still developing to this day. It's developing so much that it has caught the attention of a lot of mainstream news, including Pew News of all things. If you guys missed it, Patreon decided to ban Sargon of Akkad because he said the N-word on a stream months ago outside of his channel. And yes, there are tons of content creators out there who are still on Patreon who also uses the N-word and even egregiously use other more problematic words, and they are still on the platform. The double standards, hypocrisy, and straight up doubling down on the incident has caused a lot of people to straight up quit Patreon. Not just creators, but patrons as well. After seeing this absolutely disgusting practice from Patreon, I can totally see why anyone would pull off their support at this point. The company's practice is absolutely horrendous and straight up unfair. The attack on Sargon is pretty much targeted. It's ideologically motivated, and there's no way for you to convince me that it isn't. And this is why we have individuals pull off their support from Patreon, including content creators or political figures as well. I did try to migrate from Patreon to Subscribestar because they support PayPal, but PayPal went into Subscribestar and said, guys, you hosted a bunch of content creators that we don't like, so we're pulling off support from you. So where to go now? Where can I, as someone who makes content outside of the US, get financial support from my fans that are not from a company who likes to abuse their power for their ideology? Unfortunately, a lot of content creators on the internet rely on Patreon right now. There are millions and millions of dollars being sent through Patreon to other content creators on the internet, especially the not safe for work artists. So pulling off support from Patreon right now is not gonna hurt Patreon's business, especially when the issue is only concerning political content creators. We're probably gonna see a substantial damage, but it's not gonna be enough to ruin the business entirely. I myself ended up losing around $20 around my $420 per month revenue on Patreon, which is a shame because I ended up relying on Patreon more than I thought. I use my Patreon for my monthly living, food, internet bills, etc. I still have AdSense, but I mostly save my AdSense money or pay my college or maybe pay some bills that my parents haven't paid, which is quite a lot. Thankfully, I'm not in a situation where I am desperately in need of money, but it does suck that I lose a portion of my revenue on Patreon thanks to the horrendous practice that they have done. The problem with content creators who are outside of the US like me is that my options to get financial support from my fans are extremely limited. I can't have access to PayPal, which is really easy, but PayPal is also about as dodgy as Patreon. I ended up being in a situation where I have no choice but to rely on these two things for financial fan support, the same way I rely on YouTube and AdSense to get my monthly income. YouTube and Google, for the record, have done more horrendous things than this, and yet here I am. But thankfully, and I need to remind you this, financial support to me is completely optional. I've always said that you can support me on Patreon or PayPal, not that you have to support me in there, or that my life will end if you don't. You can choose to do all of that, but you can also support me through other means like watching my videos, or subscribing to me on YouTube, or following me on Twitter. If you're the creative types, you can also send me fan arts. Tag me on Twitter and DM me as well so that I can retweet your fan art and talk about them on my streams. For now, I will keep the Patreon and PayPal options open. You can still support me on those two platforms. You can still get video shoutouts from me. Speaking of which, huge thanks to you, the Cone Sabin and your boy S for the pledges. You are fantastic. Also, thank you for the PayPal donations, Brian, Zachary, and Michael. You guys are fantastic. But that being said, I'm not gonna tell you to support me through there. All the mentions on Patreon or PayPal are going to be for shoutouts and thank yous for supporting me, because I feel obligated to thank my financial donators even for just $1. Again, you can donate to me on those platforms, but if you find those two companies horrible, you don't have to donate at all. Donating is entirely optional. Subscribing to me is enough. Watching my videos is enough. Follow me on Twitter is enough. Hell, feel free to use ad block on my videos if you find them annoying. At the end of the day, regardless of whether or not you support me financially or emotionally, all of my YouTube content will be absolutely free. If there is a situation where it isn't, that's probably gonna be a time where I decided that my lowly porn artist career pays more handsomely.